I spent a lot of time staring out of windows in school too, but I did pay attention to drawings. And I would just make up stories and and one day, I guess all of the kids have been in school for like 6 or 7 months, and I was still kind of like, what do I do? I need to do something, but we're going to move again soon. And I thought, well, I have this funny idea. Maybe I should go ahead and write it down. And I had no idea how hard it was going to be. I had no idea what it was going to involve. I just started writing. I was like, oh my gosh, this is so fun. I'm doing amazing. And I drafted it really fast. And then I started sharing it with people, and I realized how bad it was. But they were all very encouraging. They were like, well, we like the story, but, you know, we got to fix this. So I spent a year fixing it. And then I managed to get an agent, and I managed to get that book published, and that was The Trader's Kiss. And then they said, well, what do you want to do now? I said, well, I kind of have an idea for a sequel. And they said, how about 2 sequels? And I said, it's kind of what I was hoping for, but okay, yes. I mean, I was so excited. And then I actually got the news while I was driving to Virginia to Indiana. And I was so excited, stopped and had a giant chocolate milkshake, and then went to my mother's house, and on the way back, 72 hours later, I was like, oh my gosh, what have I done? I just sold 2 books that I have no idea what's going to happen. But it worked out. It's funny that when I start writing, well, it's like it grows roots and it gets stronger, and it ends up becoming something. And that's really, it helps me because I really needed that when I started the second series. And the funny story about that is after a Trader's Meeting, my publisher said, okay, what do you want to do? I said, well, I have this great idea, and it's fully plotted and half written. And I have this great idea, and it's fully plotted. And then I was like, well, 3's a nice number. So I was like, and I have this vague idea about like a serial killer in medieval Europe. And they were like, really, that idea. And they were like, so let's go ahead and buy that. And I was like, awesome. And then 72 hours later, I was like, I don't even know what this book is about. And I actually sold 2 books at the time. And I was like, so you mean like a sequel? And they're like, well, we'll worry about that when it happens. So I was like, okay. And so much happened in between. We had COVID. My publisher shut down, and I was moved to another publisher. So like we have big publishing houses, and we have imprints in the bottom that make it up, that do like YA books or books. And mine was budget cuts, so they shut mine down, and then moved me to another one. So I was just like this manuscript left on some other editor's tour for stuff, and I was like, oh my gosh, I really hope they want me around. But I ended up writing Blood and Moonlight, and it came out okay. And then at the end, they're like, well, what do you want to do? And I said, well, I would like to do this. And they're like, okay, sounds great. You start working on that. And then a week later, they call me back and say, so you know what you were working on? How about you write a sequel to Blood and Moonlight? And I was like, I just got done writing about serial killers, and I kind of don't want to do it again. But when they ask you to do something because they like you, I gotta say yes. So I did, and that was Silence and Shadow, which is out in hardcover, but it's pretty much the similar things. But I don't know if you guys want me to read from Blood and Moonlight, or if you just have like a bunch of questions about stuff.
Yeah, you could do a reading. We could definitely open it to questions.
Okay.
Does anybody have a question that they'd like to ask?
What's the most challenging part being a writer?
Sometimes I have to remind myself that I'm actually not too bad at this. Sometimes I'll read it, I'll go back and read something I wrote, and I'm like, wow, did I write that? That's actually not too bad. But in the process, drafting is the worst part. I like to fix things and make them better than getting it down on the page, because I feel like once it's come out and it's on the page, it's like I'm kind of committed to that, and then it comes out wrong, and then you gotta figure it out. It's kind of like trying to put together a jigsaw puzzle in the middle of a tornado. Like holding it down, like grabbing more pieces and putting it on, and then you move, and then it comes apart in one place or another. It feels like sometimes, but drafting is the worst part.
When you're feeling uninspired or you're losing motivation, what do you do to recharge?
I like to go for walks and runs. That helps. Or or I watch things that I enjoy, things that like give me a big boost in terms of, just, it feels good to watch Pride and Prejudice for the 812th time.
Which
or-
one?
Keira Knightley?
Yeah, I was about to say, which one?
Why not both?
Yeah. True.
So, or I'll read those books. I'll try to read something for inspiration in the same kind of genre. Although you gotta be careful because sometimes you read something and you're like, oh, I can't write anything that good, and then you just forgot about yourself. But I don't know. A lot of times I have to say I'm inspired more by deadlines than anything else.
They can be good.
And, well, I mean, and like I said, when I read the first book, I had no idea what was going on, and I was just like, this is so fun, it's amazing. And then it got really hard because I had a publisher, and then it was like people were depending on me, and then it got heavier and heavier with each book, so it just became a matter of, I don't know, there's a lot of pressure that goes behind it. I never want to sell a book on proposal again. I would like to hand them at least half of the book and say, is this what you want? Because the whole time you're writing it and going, I really hope this is what they want, this is what they expect. The last thing you do is hand them something and have them go, no, that did not come out very well at all. Start over.
Any other questions?
Is there a character that you particularly like or dislike or that you enjoyed writing?
People, if you want to know who I relate to most of all my characters, it's actually probably Captain Quinn. I know it sounds weird, he's a dude, but I spent went to military school. I was in the military, so I understand a whole lot of the camaraderie and the talking that goes along with it. And he has a very analytical mind, and he's very yesterday's personal best is today's minimum standard type of thing. And I guess that makes it harder as a writer. It's like, okay, now you just need to do better. And that's really hard when it comes to sequels because the first book always sells better than the second and third. So even when you're writing a sequel, you're like, this is amazing, it's fun, but you know in your heart that not as many people are gonna read it. So he's the one I relate to most. Sage annoys me sometimes because she's so impulsive, but I kind of admire that she just does it, and I would shoot back and go, oh, can I do that? I don't know. And she's way more emotional than me.
Do you base any of your characters on real life people that you know?
Yes and no. So Sage is actually kind of based on my sister personality-wise. She's way more emotional than me, for one thing. And I don't know those things that word. She's definitely more like her than I am. Simon from Blood and Moonlight is physically based on my grandmother's next door neighbor. This really tall, gangly guy with blonde hair and really weird eyes. He has very light blue eyes with a wedge of brown. He's about my age and we hung out all the time when I was living in Dallas. So in my mind, that's who I see. I don't know. I kind of take little pieces of everybody around, and if somebody's like, is that character based on me? And the answer is no, not unless the guy really blows it out. It's somebody that I really didn't like, and I just wanted to imagine that. Maybe not death, but just getting what they deserve. But I also, spoiler, that I won't spoil too much, I kill people I really like too.
Yeah.
She's like, yes.
It happened, it's sad. It will make you really sad. You will get.
But then you do that and
you'll get attached to the characters.
But then when you're writing that scene and you're editing it and you're trying to get it exactly right, and you write you add some things to it, and then you write a note in the margin for the editor saying, I think I want to hang on to this sadness for 1/2 second longer. Really hurt the computer.
Yeah. But it kind of bases that fantasy world a little bit in reality because, in reality bad things do happen.
Mm-hmm.
And, those things happen in fantasy too. And the characters feel that. And your characters, that lingers with them through the other books
It
too.
makes you feel better. And I think we're thinking of the same
Yes.
So now, the day I killed that person, I couldn't, I'm so sad I could not make dinner.
I honestly wasn't expecting it. Yeah. So that makes me feel a little bit better that you felt that, because
My husband came home and he was like, "What's wrong?" And I'm like, "I didn't kill somebody today." He's like, "You want to eat?" Yes.
At what point did you decide that character was going to die?
Then I created it.
Oh. So you knew from the beginning.
From the very beginning, I knew that the character was which made it worse.
Wow.
Every time I did a scene with that character, and I was like, "Oh, I need to make him really likable so that it really hurts." Exactly. Just that I really hurt.
Yeah, that would be difficult, I think, more so than knowing the whole time.
Well, and then, so in the editing process, so the debut novel, you have to like shorten it down because you have to earn every single word. So when I'm writing this, like, it's shrunk down by almost 10% in editing the Creator's Kiss. And then my editor was like, "Oh no, we cut out way too much," so then we got to add about half of that back in. And then when I were selling it to some foreign publishers, they were like, "We want more about this, this, and this." So it ended up ballooning back up to the size it was when I sold it to them. It was much better, it was much leaner. So it was definitely a better book, but it ended up being about as long as I wanted it to be in the first place. So I was like, "Well, I think we need to know more about this character, or so that his death really matters more." It's like, I agree.
Any other questions?
I think all of your covers are really beautiful. Are you one of the few people that gets a say in, or is this all?
I get like zero say at all.
Did you like all of them?
I had mixed feelings about some of them, and I won't tell you which ones, but so the original Ruin had like a kind of like a metallic pink, and it was much prettier. So the most I got out of it was like, so they showed me the first one, and I said it looks more like a sword than a dagger, so they made it look more like a dagger. And then they showed me the second one, and I said it needs to be water, not wine, and that's, it's important plot-wise. You get it when you read it. And then in the third one, I think I said something about I was like, I think the flowers dominate too much, so they kind of faded in. That's all the say I got. And the only title I got to choose was this one.
Oh,
really? Well, actually, so they gave me a whole bunch of words to work with traders, and I was like, I kind of think this and this, and they I don't even remember which of the ones I chose, but then in the editing process of Traders Room, they were like, "This is getting too complicated, we need to cut this," and I was like, "You do realize that you're cutting the ruin of the actual trader out?" And they're like, "Oh yeah, okay." So I got to take more words. This was the only title that I actually came up with. And they were like, at first they were like, "I don't know," and I was like, "Well, you just think about it, and we'll just work on it like that." And the other thing I'm really proud of is they showed me this design. I think it had blood dripping on her forehead. I was like, "Oh, make it look like a teardrop." And they're like, "Oh yeah, that's way better." But that's all to say I ever got. But maybe if I become a bestseller, I'll have more choices.
So did you submit with a title that you thought it was going to be?
So, Trader's Kiss, I called it Matchmaker's Apprentice, because I couldn't come up with anything better. And I thought that was descriptive, and it was a big mouthful. And then, I think Blood and Moonlight, I think when I started it, I think I called it Mask of Midnight or something like that, and then they're like, "We want to call it Whispers of Blood and Moonlight." I was like, "That sounds fine." And they're like, "Oh, no, that's too long," so now it's just Blood and Moonlight, but in a file on my desk, it's still called Whispers. Oh, sorry.
You talked a little bit about the struggles of feeling like your first book was good enough, and then could you tell us a little bit more about the process of, finishing the book, or at least feeling like the idea was done enough, and maybe what it was like to get an agent and publisher with those ideas in mind, I guess.
So, I remember that people always ask how long. The first draft took 6 weeks. My husband was on night shift, so I worked until like 5 in the morning. But I was so excited. And then spent a couple months messing with it, and then I got more and more into the writing community and met more people who were giving me more criticism, and I cleaned it up. When I went to a writer's conference, I think, so February of 20, so I started writing it, remember, May 7th, 2014 is when I started writing it. like, it was like in my brain, I'm like, I'm gonna do this, but first we have my son's first communion, so when everybody's gone, then I'm gonna do that. So I remember May 7th was the day I opened the document. And so then, by the following February, I went to a writer's conference. I had been rejected by many agents that I had applied to, and but on Thanksgiving, I had gotten a full request from an agent, which like spun me up like nothing else. She was like, but it's probably gonna take me about 6 months to get to it, because they have to work with people first. She's like, so if you get another offer in the meantime, let me know. That's how that works. So it's like, they'll bump you up to the top of the reading list if other people are wanting it. Or she's, so I said, okay. But then after the writer's conference, I realized that it needed some major work. So I overhauled it, and I sent it back to some people that had read it, and they were like, oh my gosh, this is so much better. But, here's a few more notes. And right around that time, I got a note from that agent who said, I am actually finally about to read it. Is it still available? I know when I fall in love with it if it's already gone. Some other agent already took it. And I said, I think she's going to reject what she has. So I took a chance and said, give me 2 more weeks. And I gave her 2 more weeks. So 2 more, she said, okay, 2 more weeks. I sent her the next draft, and she, and like a week later, I got an email from her, and she said, I've left until 3 a.m. I need to talk to you right now. So I said, yes. But we were also moving from Omaha to Virginia, or about to. So we had a conversation on the phone. She was amazing, and it was but she was a new agent, rather inexperienced, had almost no other clients. So we could be good, it could be bad, or whatnot. But she was like, I was kind of weirded out by how excited she was. She's like, what else do you want to write? I was like, well, I was kind of always thought of it as a trilogy, but she's like, okay, that's fine. Okay. And then she recommended one significant change, but she's like, but I will, she said, if you don't agree, I will still offer representing on that. So I went to, in the middle of the move, I actually got extra time, usually given 2 weeks, and I went out to other agents, and I got some other offers of representation, so I kept going back. I went back to Valerie, because I felt like the only reason she had it when she was ready to read it when it was ready, it felt kind of like fate in a way. And so I worked with her on it. I made that major revision, and then sometime after Halloween, so that was the end of May, and then worked on it, moving, so it would take longer. After Halloween, she's like, okay, I just sent it to 6 publishers, and I was like, oh! And I was like, which ones? So she started naming like all the big ones, and I was like, are you freaking crazy? Yeah, I'm not that big. And she's like, don't worry about it. She's like, well, if they say no, they'll give us some feedback. I was like, okay, good. They're all going to reject it, but they might tell me some advice, and then we can move to the middle tier publishers. And then I got one publisher that came back and said, no, your character isn't likable enough. Okay, whatever. I didn't like her either sometimes. She didn't do what I told her to. And then then there's a big break for nothing in December where everybody catches up on work and everyone shuts down. And then in mid-January she called back. She said, so hey, one of them wants to buy it. And I was like, oh, okay. Wow. So I'm like sitting down and I'm holding an iron in one hand because we're ready for a wedding. And I'm holding an iron in one hand and like pants in the other one. Is this really happening? And then she said, okay, so now I have to go to the other publishers that are considering it. And she called me the next week and she said, okay, now another one wants it. And so she actually bumped their offers up until it doubled what they were. And I was like, okay, this is what's happening. And then we started, I picked one. She was like, you can really lose one because they were about the same in the end. We went with Imprint because they were newer. She's like, you'll be one of their first books. You'll probably get a lot of attention from them because they don't have a lot of else going on. Like, okay. So we went with them, and then we spent the next few months editing, and I literally would hit my head on the wall and cry sometimes because like, I can't get this right, but then somehow I did. I found out that 95% of the time the editor is correct about what they say. Because sometimes I'd be like, that's dumb. I don't want to change it that way. And they would go, but I'm going to do it that way just to show them how wrong they are. I'm going to do it, and I'd be like, ooh, that's way better. There's only one time that it didn't happen, and it was just like, I said, I can't a dead body in the next frame. If I don't end the scene this way, you have to address the dead body. I'd rather just have people pass out. We'll talk about it later. And the editor's like, okay, that's fine. That was the only, I did try several times. It was just like, it's just not working. And then after that, they invited me to go on the Fierce Reads national tour, hyperventilating, and my agent's like, now is when we ask if they want a sequel. It's now to, and that was when all of a sudden I had a 3-book deal. Like, we're going to start promoting another trilogy.
I have a question. So you went into the Traitors trilogy kind of knowing that you wanted it to be a trilogy. Did you go into these two knowing it was going to be a duology and not a trilogy? Or having any idea of like...
No, I kind of just wrote Blood and Moonlight, just focused on getting that one done, and then I kind of had something that I wanted to do next, and I was like, but I didn't know either if they really wanted it, so I didn't want to spend time thinking about a sequel, but then when they asked for it, I was like, okay. Well, I always left room. You want to leave enough unanswered questions at the end so that the reader at least feels like there's more. It's not too absolutely complete. There's possibility.
Follow-up question to that. Your future projects that you're working on, do you have any that are standalones, or do you see yourself working in, trilogies, duologies, like you want to linger in those worlds?
So series are kind of falling out of favor with young adult readers, well, at least with publishers. So what they've asked for is standalones. So I've been coming at them with standalones. And honestly, series is just stressful. I mean, in a lot of ways, but so looking forward to that. But I was fighting with this one that they this idea they liked, and I was fighting with it. And finally, they actually I may have come up with a solution. So it happened on a drive to Montana. I'm driving like, oh my gosh, that might solve all my problems. This is my daughter. We went on a visit to a college in Montana this past week, so a lot of driving helps.
So once you have a publisher, do you switch, or are you kind of locked in?
So it's weird. I do know people that have gone to different publishers, but usually once you've gone with a publisher, you develop a relationship with a particular editor, and they know your style. Although editors move between houses, or they retire, or their imprint gets cut, and they move on to something else. So there's a little bit of that, but so you can switch publishers, but you usually don't do that until whenever you. In your contract is usually built in that whatever you write, they get the first chance to reject it. So if you come to them with something and they're like, well, we don't like that, you're free to take it somewhere else, but they have to say no thank you first. And a lot of times a publisher is focused on a specific brand from somebody, so I bring them projects and they're like, that's not really your brand. It's like, yeah, but that's what I want to write. And they're like, your brand is stabbing people and kissing, and I was like, but I'm going to do this fluffy romance over here, and they're like, so I may have to take that to someone else, but that's okay. As long as.
Is that why a lot of authors publish under a different name when they switch genres?
Yeah, they do that just to distinguish it a little bit, or to get out of it. I don't know if I would do that or not. I'll cross that bridge when I get to it.
Any other questions?
So when you're in your writing process, do you like to have everything all plotted out, or do you just start writing and see what happens? And also, as you're writing, do you like to edit as you go, or do you like to just get it all out and then go back and start it?
So I know you're supposed to just write it all out because later that I have to fix it along the way. It's kind of like building a car that you're driving, and as it starts to fall apart, and you're just like, go back and fix it, tighten things up. So that's what it feels like to me. But so pantsers are the ones that just like fly by the seat of pants, and the plotters that write everything out. I like to say that I'm kind of in the middle. I would say I play croquet. So, croquet, you have all the hoops, and the ball has to go through the hoops and all that works. So I know the big events, what happens in between, can be really crazy. You get knocked off course and then come back and whatnot. But usually the main plot points stay the same. It does kind of get wild.
Are there components in the stories that you've had to discard that you loved and you'll show up later, or will show up later in other stories?
I haven't had too much of that, because there are things I loved, and then later on I realized why they do have, I can find, I have to find them somewhere, but I have an alternate point of view scene for Trader Joe's. And it's that
Do you have
chapter.
that posted anywhere?
It's on the Fierce Reads website, and I can try to find the link for it, but it's that chapter. And it's from his perspective.
I would love to read
So
that.
people have read it, has anybody read it? Yet, not yet? I'm just
Not
gonna say it's that chapter. And it's from his perspective, and I really enjoy writing that because it was so much fun, because he was so, his whole mindset about what's going on, and how he's basically resisting the idea of being in love with her, and like, but he has to protect her, and he's finally, it's like, he's at the end, and so he's just like, I'm done, this is, I can't pretend she doesn't matter to me anymore.
You had a question?
Yeah. When you were writing your first book, did you intentionally want it to appeal to like the young adult age group, or is that more something that was decided after the fact?
I don't know why, it was automatically, she was 16, 17 years old, I don't know if it was because I was afraid to go into adult territory, because then I would have to like, be more mature about some things, or more detail, I don't know, it just felt right. I guess I kind of wanted to write my own, Atlanta story. You saw, did some of your stuff? Yeah, I lived Atlanta and in Dayton when I was in high school, and so it was just like, I want to write for me, like at that age. I want to write the book that I would have been crazy about, which is funny because that title and that cover would have turned me off so much in high school. I would have been like, that looks too fluffy. But everyone else loves it, so I'm okay with it, you know? Yeah.
I'm also an 80s kid, and there wasn't a lot of, like, you're really lucky, there wasn't a lot of young adult books, and especially, or what there was, it just wasn't great. So I was reading whatever my mom read, not appropriate. So I'm curious what influenced you or inspired you as you decided to embark on young adult. Had you already been reading since you already had kids kind of that age and stage, or?
It was a little bit of that. I usually cast on Tamara Pierce stuff to my kids and trying to find other things. I read a lot, some Robin McKinley. So I was really kind of more of a classic fantasy person. The new stuff was fun, but I really liked the old-fashioned stuff that kind of came out. And I think if you've read The Hero in the Crown and The Blue Sword, which are by Robin McKinley, which those are like, the influence is heavy, super heavy, especially in Trader's Room. But that's where a lot of that comes from. But there's also one book that I read when I was in 3rd grade, one of the best books ever, and I highly recommend it even though you're in 5th grade. It's called The Ordinary Princess by Erin Beaty. And I read that to my kids when, like, the youngest was 5 and the oldest was like 12. And the 12, I started reading it to younger kids, but the 12-year-old boys were like really into it. They came by and like, what are you reading? It's really short, super sweet. One of the best fairy tales I've ever read. And so tongue-in-cheek. Adults, do you know that one? I have MMKKAYE. Ordinary Princess.
Any other questions?
Go ahead.
I have a really dumb question, but, so, pretend you have to be in a cage match, and you have to pick one of your characters as a partner, who's your partner?
Definitely.